Austin, please let me explain. You didn't destroy our marriage. You burned it down yourself. The fitness tracker notification on my phone was giving me more satisfaction than my marriage had in months. At least when I tracked my sales territories, the data stayed consistent. Unlike the woman currently pacing behind me at midnight, her voice dripping with arrogance as she spoke into her phone. Of course, I'm talking to other guys, Jennifer. I'm not going to limit myself when he's not even my best option anymore. Melissa thought I couldn't hear her over the sound of my laptop keyboard. She was wrong about that, just like she'd been wrong about everything else lately. My name's Austin Reed, and I used to think I was the luckiest guy in Scottsdale. 37 years old, regional sales director for Southwest Industrial Supply, beautiful wife, nice house in the desert suburbs with a 3-car garage and pool. The American dream, right? Wrong, dead wrong. I minimized the spreadsheet and turned around. Melissa was still on the phone, her back to me. Designer workout clothes hugging curves that used to make my heart race. Now, they just reminded me of the credit card bills. Austin's in the home office again, she continued, completely oblivious, probably obsessing over his quarterly reports. God, Jen, sometimes I wonder what I was thinking. The office suddenly felt smaller. Boxes of Christmas decorations we'd never put up lined the built-in shelves. Half-finished projects cluttered my desk. A vacation planning folder Melissa had begged me to organize, then forgotten about. Family photos turned face down because seeing our smiling faces had become too depressing. I cleared my throat. Melissa spun around, phone still pressed to her ear, eyes wide like a deer caught in headlights. "I'll call you back," she said quickly, ending the call. "Rough day at the wellness center?" I asked, my voice steady despite the fury building in my chest. "Austin, I didn't know you were still up." She tucked a strand of blonde hair behind her ear. A nervous habit from our dating days. Back when her nerves were cute instead of calculated, clearly. I saved my work and closed the laptop. "So, I'm not your best option anymore." Her face flushed red. "You weren't supposed to hear that, but I did." Funny how that works. I stepped closer and she backed against my filing cabinet. "What other guys are you talking to, Melissa? It's not what you think. Really, because it sounded like my wife of 12 years just told her best friend that she's shopping around for an upgrade." Melissa's jaw tightened. The mask was slipping, revealing something cold underneath. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm tired of being married to someone who spends more time analyzing sales data than with his own family. This job pays for your yoga classes and your wellness conferences and whatever the hell else you do all day. I work too, Austin. My position at Phoenix Wellness Solutions is important. I laughed, short and bitter. "Right. The job where you spend half your time at client retreats with potential partners. Those are business meetings." "Sure they are." I turned back to my desk, dismissing her. "Go back to your phone call. I'm sure Jen's waiting to hear more about how disappointing your husband is." Melissa stood there for a moment, probably weighing whether to escalate or retreat. She chose retreat, her bare feet padding against the tile as she stormed toward our bedroom. "This conversation isn't over," she called back. "Yeah, it is," I muttered to the empty office. But I was wrong about that too. This conversation was just beginning, and it was going to get a whole lot uglier before it was done. The next morning, I found Melissa's laptop open on our kitchen counter. She'd rushed off to some sunrise yoga session, leaving her wellness tracking app displayed on the screen. Our 10-year-old daughter Sophie was at her friend's house for a sleepover, giving me privacy to investigate. Normally, I wouldn't look. Normally, I'd respect her privacy. But normal had died in my office last night. I sat down and started scrolling. Her fitness tracker showed interesting patterns. Heart rate spikes during lunch hours when she claimed to be in meditation sessions. Location data showing frequent stops at the Phoenician Resort during working hours. Then I found the folder labeled Personal Development Goals. Inside was a detailed spreadsheet titled Life Optimization Analysis. My coffee went cold as I opened the file. Melissa had created a comprehensive comparison chart. Financial stability, physical attributes, career potential, social connections, everything quantified and ranked. At the bottom of the final column, in bold red text, current situation requires strategic adjustment. Strategic adjustment. 12 years of marriage reduced to a business term. I stared at that spreadsheet for a long time, my mind working through possibilities like analyzing a challenging sales territory. Melissa thought she was so smart, so methodical, But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd forgotten that I specialize in data analysis and territory management, and the first rule of sales is knowing your competition. I opened a new spreadsheet and got to work. After 10 years in competitive sales, I'd learned that the best strategies were built on solid intelligence and careful timing. Melissa's consultation was scheduled for 2 p.m. at Desert Investment Group downtown. She'd been preparing for weeks, treating it like her gateway to a more optimized life. The meeting was with Brad Sullivan, an investment advisor who specialized in retirement planning for professionals seeking lifestyle upgrades. Perfect. I'd spent 3 hours crafting my masterpiece, a presentation that looked identical to her wellness consultation materials, but with some crucial modifications. Instead of retirement planning, it was a detailed analysis of male anatomy enhancement options, complete with before and after photos, procedure costs, and a final slide titled Why Size Matters in Financial Planning. The beauty was in the details. I'd used her company's template, her professional headshot, even her favorite fonts. To a casual observer, it looked like something Melissa Reed, wellness coordinator, might legitimately present to a conservative investment firm. Of course, no conservative investment firm would ever want to see an anatomy enhancement presentation. I replaced her real file 30 minutes before she left for the meeting. Melissa grabbed her laptop bag, kissed my cheek like nothing had happened, and headed off to destroy her own career. I didn't have to wait long. My phone rang at 2:34 p.m. Austin, Melissa's voice was shaking. Something terrible happened. What's wrong? I asked, injecting just the right amount of concern into my voice. My presentation got corrupted somehow. The wrong file opened and it was... God, Austin, it was horrible. Disgusting. The partners thought I was some kind of pervert. That's awful, honey. What kind of file was it? I can't even say. Security escorted me out. They said they were considering legal action for sexual harassment. I made sympathetic noises while she sobbed into the phone. I'm sure it's just a technical glitch. These things happen. No, they don't. This was sabotage, Austin. Someone did this to me deliberately. Who would do something like that? I don't know, but I'm going to find out. She hung up, and I smiled for the first time in weeks. By evening, the story had spread through Scottsdale's professional network like wildfire. Our neighbor, Carlos Martinez, cornered me while I was checking the mail. Austin, man, I heard about Melissa's unfortunate presentation situation, he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Such a shame when technology fails us. Yeah, real shame, I agreed. Jennifer Walsh was at the country club this afternoon, telling everyone about it. Apparently, the presentation was quite explicit. I shook my head sadly. Melissa's devastated. She thinks someone hacked her computer. Oh man, who would do such a thing? No idea. But whoever it was really knew how to hurt her. Carlos nodded knowingly. Well, I'm sure the truth will come out eventually. It always does. That evening, Melissa barely spoke during dinner. She picked at her quinoa salad while I ate the grilled salmon she'd prepared. According to her new macro tracking regimen, Sophie was still at her sleepover, leaving us alone with the weight of unspoken accusations. I know you did this, Melissa finally said. I looked up from my plate. Did what? The presentation, the sabotage, all of it. Melissa, I was in client calls all morning. Carlos saw me taking delivery calls at 1:30. You could have done it earlier or set up some kind of automated system, I laughed. You think I'm some kind of IT genius? I manage industrial supply chains, not hack into PowerPoint presentations. You know more about technology than you let on. Not that much. Besides, why would I sabotage your consultation? If you got that investment advisor position, you'd be making more money. That helps both of us. Melissa stared at me across the table, searching my face for tells. But I'd learned to control my expressions during 10 years in competitive sales. My wife's interrogation skills didn't even register. This isn't over, she said finally. What isn't over? Whatever game you think you're playing. I set down my fork and met her gaze. I'm not playing any games, Melissa. But if I were, you should remember something. What's that? I always exceed my sales targets. She went upstairs without another word, and I finished my salmon in peace. Later that night, I lay in bed listening to Melissa type frantically on her laptop. She was probably updating her LinkedIn profile, reaching out to contacts, trying to salvage her reputation. Good luck with that. In a place like Scottsdale, scandal had a long half-life. My phone buzzed with a text from my buddy Steve Parker, who owned Canyon Sports Bar in Old Town. Heard about Melissa's presentation disaster. You doing okay? I typed back, fine, just one of those things. Right, one of those things. Want to grab a beer tomorrow? Sure, could use the company. Steve had been a territory manager for 20 years before buying the bar. He understood the value of patience, planning, and strategic positioning. He also understood that sometimes good people got pushed too far. I had a feeling I was going to need his understanding very soon. Canyon Sports Bar hadn't changed since the 90s. Dim lighting, worn leather booths, and the permanent smell of buffalo wings. Steve was wiping down glasses behind the bar when I walked in, his weathered face breaking into a grin. Austin Reed, as I live and breathe. Heard you've been having some domestic excitement. I slid onto a bar stool and accepted the beer he pushed across the bar. Word travels fast in this town, faster than gossip at a homeowners association meeting. Jennifer Walsh was in here last night, 3 sheets to the wind, telling anyone who'd listen about Melissa's presentation disaster. What exactly did she say? Steve leaned against the bar, lowering his voice. That your wife accidentally showed a room full of investment advisors a slideshow about male enhancement procedures, complete with before and after photos and cost analyses. I nearly choked on my beer. Cost analyses? Steve's words, not mine. She seemed to think it was hilarious. Said Melissa had it coming, after all the times she'd bragged about optimizing her life situation. Optimizing, her words again. Apparently, Melissa's been pretty vocal about her dissatisfaction with married life. I absorbed this information while Steve served another customer. When he returned, I asked the question that had been eating at me for days. Steve, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to find out what their spouse was really up to, how would they go about it? Steve's expression grew serious. Hypothetically? Well, hypothetically, I'd say the best surveillance is the kind people don't notice. Public records, social media, digital footprints, nothing illegal, nothing that could bite you later. Makes sense. Of course, if someone was really determined to be careless, they might leave data trails all over the place. Email accounts synced to shared devices, location services enabled on their phones, that sort of thing. I nodded thoughtfully. Hypothetically, that would be pretty sloppy. Extremely sloppy. The kind of sloppy that makes an ex-territory manager wonder if someone wants to get caught. That night, I put Steve's hypothetical advice to work. Melissa had left her laptop open again. Either she was getting careless or she was testing me. Either way, I wasn't going to waste the opportunity. Her email was a data goldmine. Months of correspondence with someone named Brad Sullivan, the investment advisor who'd apparently been mentoring Melissa's life optimization strategy. The early emails were professional enough, but they had gradually become more personal, then more intimate. I found photos Melissa had sent, not completely explicit, but suggestive enough to make my stomach turn. Worse were the messages where they discussed me. Melissa complained about my lack of vision, my middle management mentality, my inability to provide the lifestyle she deserved. Brad's responses were encouraging in all the wrong ways. He called me a transitional husband and suggested Melissa deserved exponential growth opportunities. The most recent email thread made everything clear. Brad was helping Melissa plan her exit strategy. New career, new apartment, new life. The consultation at Desert Investment Group had been just the first step. Too bad that step had gone so spectacularly wrong. I screenshot everything and saved it to a secure folder on my work server. Then I started researching Brad Sullivan's background. LinkedIn showed a successful financial advisor with interests in wellness consulting and lifestyle optimization. His profile photo revealed a man in his mid-40s with silver hair and an expensive smile, the kind of guy who wore $1,000 suits and drove German cars. More importantly, his social media showed a pattern. Brad Sullivan had a type, married women in their late 30s, usually in career transition, always looking for someone to blame for their disappointments. Melissa wasn't his first married client, and she probably wouldn't be his last. But she was going to be his most expensive mistake. I spent the next week conducting surveillance that would have made any sales manager proud. Brad's routine was predictable. Morning workout at an upscale gym, lunch meetings at trendy restaurants, evening consultations at the rooftop lounge of the Four Seasons. Melissa had started meeting him there twice a week, always claiming she was at wellness seminars or client development events. I watched from across the street as they laughed over craft cocktails, her hand resting on his arm, his fingers tracing patterns on her wrist. They looked good together, matched, like the kind of power couple that appeared in lifestyle magazines. It made what I was planning even more satisfying. On Thursday evening, I followed them to Brad's apartment complex, a glass tower downtown with a doorman and valet parking. They disappeared into the elevator together, and I settled in to wait. 3 hours later, they emerged, Melissa's hair slightly mussed, her lipstick gone. Brad walked her to her car like a gentleman, kissing her goodbye in full view of the building's security cameras. Perfect. I had everything I needed now. Photos, emails, surveillance footage from public spaces, and a clear pattern of behavior. Melissa and Brad had been careful to avoid anything that could be traced directly back to them, but they'd forgotten about the digital footprints they were leaving everywhere else. The question now was how to use this information for maximum impact. I thought about Steve's advice regarding hypothetical situations. The best revenge wasn't just about exposing the truth, it was about letting people expose themselves. Melissa and Brad thought they were so clever, so sophisticated. They thought they understood how the optimization game was played. They were about to learn that they'd been playing against a professional. Meanwhile, Melissa's career damage was spreading faster than I'd anticipated. Phoenix Wellness Solutions had placed her on administrative leave, pending their investigation into the presentation incident. The company was concerned about liability issues, especially after Desert Investment Group had formally complained about the explicit nature of the materials. Melissa spent most of her time at home now, making desperate phone calls to contacts in the wellness industry. But news traveled fast in professional circles, and her reputation was becoming radioactive. Every conversation ended the same way, with polite excuses and promises to keep her resume on file. Sophie returned from her extended sleepover weekend on Sunday afternoon, chattering excitedly about her friend's new puppy. She was oblivious to the tension in our house, focused on fourth-grade concerns like upcoming book reports and soccer practice schedules. I was grateful for her innocence, her ability to fill our home with normal childhood energy while the adult world crumbled around her. That evening, while Melissa sulked in our bedroom and Sophie worked on homework, I finalized my plans for the next phase. The Scottsdale Homeowners Association annual meeting was scheduled for Friday night. Perfect timing. I'd volunteered months ago to present the quarterly Neighborhood Watch Report, a responsibility I'd taken on after our recent string of property crimes. Melissa had no idea what was coming. She thought her biggest problem was salvaging her career after one embarrassing presentation. She was about to discover that her career was the least of her concerns. The week passed in a strange routine. Melissa continued her damage control efforts, growing more desperate as each rejection came in. I maintained my normal work schedule, managing my territory accounts and preparing quarterly reports. To any observer, I was handling the stress of my wife's career crisis with admirable composure. But underneath the surface, I was orchestrating the most comprehensive sales presentation of my career. Every detail mattered. Every variable had been analyzed. Every contingency had been planned for. This wasn't about emotion anymore. This was about market positioning and competitive advantage. On Wednesday, I created an anonymous email account and began sending carefully crafted messages to key players in the Phoenix marketing and wellness industry. The emails contained selected screenshots of Melissa's correspondence with Brad, carefully edited to focus on her unprofessional conduct and disparaging comments about clients and colleagues. I wasn't trying to destroy her immediately. I was softening the market, creating conditions for maximum impact when the main event arrived. By Thursday morning, whispers were already circulating through professional networks. Melissa's phone had stopped ringing entirely. The morning of the HOA meeting, I received an unexpected gift. Melissa's fitness tracker data showed she'd been at the Four Seasons until 2 a.m. the previous night. Heart rate patterns suggested she wasn't there for meditation. More importantly, her location services had been active the entire time, creating a detailed digital trail of her movements within the hotel. Brad Sullivan, it seemed, was getting careless in his confidence. Or perhaps Melissa was becoming more reckless in her desperation. Either way, they'd just provided me with real-time evidence of their relationship, time-stamped and GPS verified. I spent the afternoon preparing my presentation materials using the same methodical approach I applied to major client pitches. The difference was that this time, my audience was my neighbors, and my product was the truth about my wife's optimization strategy. Sophie came home from school excited about her upcoming science fair project. She wanted to build a volcano, she announced, something that would really explode and impress her classmates. I helped her plan the project while Melissa hovered nervously in the background, claiming she wasn't feeling well enough to attend the community meeting. "You should go," I told her as we reviewed Sophie's project timeline. "It's important for us to maintain community involvement, especially after your recent career challenges. People might think we're hiding something if we don't show up." Melissa's face went pale. "I don't think I can handle being around the neighbors right now. Everyone's probably heard about the presentation disaster. That's exactly why you need to be there," I said gently. "Show them you're not ashamed of a technical malfunction. Demonstrate that you're still an engaged community member." She reluctantly agreed, probably reasoning that missing the meeting would generate more gossip than attending. She had no idea that her presence was essential for what I had planned. The destruction wouldn't be nearly as satisfying if she wasn't there to witness it firsthand. At 7:30 p.m., we walked to the community center together. Melissa wore a conservative blue dress and minimal makeup, trying to project respectability and humility. I carried my laptop bag and presentation materials, looking like any other resident preparing to deliver a routine neighborhood watch report. The community center was packed with the usual crowd of homeowners and board members. Jennifer Walsh had positioned herself near the front, phone ready to capture anything noteworthy for her social media followers. Carlos Martinez nodded sympathetically at Melissa, playing the role of supportive neighbor while clearly enjoying the drama. I'd made sure Brad Sullivan knew about the meeting through a carefully worded message suggesting he might want to see how his former consultation client was handling her newfound community attention. The message had been sent from an anonymous account, but I'd included enough details about Melissa's recent struggles to ensure he understood the implications. As residents filed in and claimed their seats, I spotted a familiar silver-haired figure lurking near the back entrance. Brad had taken the bait. His presence would transform my presentation from neighborhood gossip into live-action proof of everything I was about to reveal. The meeting began with routine business: budget discussions, landscaping proposals, pool maintenance schedules. I sat quietly in the second row, reviewing my notes and waiting for my turn at the podium. Melissa fidgeted beside me, clearly uncomfortable with the attention, but still unaware of what was coming. When HOA President Jennifer Walsh called my name to deliver the neighborhood watch report, I stood confidently and approached the microphone. The projection screen had been set up earlier, tested and ready for my presentation. Everything was in position for the most important sales pitch of my life. "Good evening, neighbors," I began, my voice carrying the authority I'd developed through 10 years of territory management. "Thank you for attending our quarterly community meeting. As your neighborhood watch coordinator, I want to discuss a specific security threat that's been affecting our community." I clicked the remote, and the screen came alive with the title slide, Community Security Analysis, Internal Threats and External Manipulation. Melissa's face began to drain of color as she realized this wasn't going to be a standard crime prevention presentation. "Tonight," I continued, "we're going to examine how outside consultants use professional credentials and financial expertise to target our community's most vulnerable residents, particularly those experiencing life transitions or career disappointments." The audience leaned forward with interest. This was clearly going to be more entertaining than typical HOA business. In the back of the room, I could see Brad Sullivan shifting uncomfortably near the exit. But before I could advance to the next slide, Brad Sullivan made his fatal mistake. Unable to contain himself any longer, he pushed through the crowd toward the front of the room, his face flushed with anger and panic. "That's enough!" he shouted, pointing an accusing finger at me. "Reed, you're going to pay for this character assassination. This is harassment, pure and simple." The entire room turned to stare at the stranger, who'd burst into their community meeting. Murmurs rippled through the audience as neighbors tried to understand who this well-dressed outsider was, and why he was disrupting their HOA gathering. I smiled and clicked to the next slide, which displayed Brad's LinkedIn profile photo alongside his company information. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet Brad Sullivan, investment advisor and lifestyle optimization consultant. Mr. Sullivan specializes in helping married residents transition to what he calls more exponential growth opportunities." Brad realized his mistake immediately. By showing up, by making threats, he'd confirmed everything I was about to reveal. His presence transformed my presentation from neighborhood gossip into live-action proof of an ongoing situation. Melissa had gone completely white, frozen in her seat as she watched her carefully planned exit strategy collapse in real time. "Brad," she whispered urgently, "you weren't supposed to be here," but the damage was done. I clicked to the next slide, showing Melissa's fitness tracker data with heart rate spikes clearly marked during her supposed meditation sessions. As you can see, Mr. Sullivan's consultation methods are quite intensive. Heart rates reaching 140 BPM during what my wife claimed were relaxation techniques. The audience was completely captivated now. Jennifer Walsh was recording everything, her phone capturing every moment of the unfolding drama. Carlos Martinez sat with his mouth open, clearly enjoying the unexpected entertainment. I advanced to the GPS location data, showing Melissa's frequent visits to the Four Seasons during working hours. These optimization sessions typically take place at upscale hotels, always during business hours, always when spouses believe their partners are attending legitimate wellness seminars. "Stop this right now," Melissa finally found her voice, standing up and facing the crowd. "This is a private matter. Austin has no right to violate my privacy this way." Privacy? I clicked to the email screenshots, carefully edited to protect. Explicit content while revealing the scope of their relationship. You mean like the privacy you violated when you shared intimate details about our marriage with your consultant? Or the privacy you respected when you planned your exit strategy in writing? The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Neighbors who'd known Melissa for years stared in disbelief as the evidence mounted on the projection screen. Mrs. Patterson was fanning herself with a meeting agenda. The younger residents were taking pictures with their phones. Brad attempted damage control, his voice rising above the commotion. "This presentation is taken completely out of context. Mr. Reed is clearly having some kind of emotional breakdown. These are confidential client communications being used maliciously." I clicked to the final slide, showing time-stamped photos of Brad and Melissa together at various locations around Scottsdale. Confidential, yes, but hardly professional. As you can see, Mr. Sullivan's consulting relationship with my wife extends well beyond traditional financial planning. That did it. The room exploded in shocked exclamations and angry murmurs. Brad Sullivan, investment advisor and pillar of the professional community, had been caught red-handed conducting an affair under the guise of business consulting. Jennifer Walsh approached the stage, still recording, her phone capturing Brad's desperate attempts to push through the crowd toward the exit. In the struggle with concerned neighbors trying to block his path, Brad's expensive phone skittered across the floor. Jennifer bent down and scooped it up. The screen was unlocked, displaying his text conversations with multiple contacts. "Oh my God," she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at all these other women. There are dozens of them." She held up the phone, and even from the stage, I could see a long list of female contacts, each conversation following similar patterns of professional consultation, evolving into personal relationship. Brad Sullivan wasn't just manipulating my wife. He was running a systematic operation, targeting vulnerable married women throughout Scottsdale's professional community. The revelation sent shockwaves through the audience as neighbors realized their own wives, sisters, and friends might have been targets. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, my voice cutting through the chaos, "this is why community vigilance matters. Predators like Mr. Sullivan count on our trust, our tendency to mind our own business, our reluctance to ask uncomfortable questions." Brad finally broke free from the crowd and fled toward the exit, but not before every phone in the room had captured his face and his panicked retreat. By tomorrow, his image would be circulating through every professional network in Phoenix. Melissa sat alone in her chair, staring at the floor as neighbors whispered and pointed. Her optimization strategy had optimized her right out of her career, her marriage, her social standing, and her future. She'd wanted to upgrade her life situation. Instead, she'd destroyed everything she'd worked to build. As I packed up my presentation equipment, neighbors approached to thank me for exposing the threat that had been operating in their community. Several mentioned wives or female relatives who'd recently started working with wellness consultants or financial advisors. Brad Sullivan's client base was about to evaporate overnight. Jennifer Walsh stopped me as I headed for the exit. "Austin," she said, her voice filled with genuine admiration. "That was the most thorough neighborhood watch presentation in HOA history. You didn't just protect your own family, you protected the entire community." I walked home alone through the quiet streets of our subdivision, leaving Melissa to face the consequences of her strategic planning. My phone buzzed with a text from Steve Parker. "Remind me never to get on your bad side." "That was surgical," I typed back. "Just applied standard territory management principles to a personal situation. Sometimes the best defense is overwhelming offense." At home, I sat in my office and reviewed the quarterly sales reports that had been waiting for my attention. Unlike optimization strategies, sales territories were predictable. You analyzed the data, identified the opportunities and threats, developed appropriate responses, and executed with precision. Melissa Reed had wanted exponential growth opportunities. Instead, she discovered that some markets were more competitive than others. And in this particular territory, I'd always exceeded my performance targets. The motion detector I'd been meaning to install was still sitting on my desk, waiting for attention. I picked it up and headed for the garage. Unlike marriages, security systems were reliable. When they detected a threat, they sounded the alarm. And once activated, they protected exactly what they were designed to guard.